Imagine this traveller, you didn't arrive here by coincidence. Something in the quiet machinery of the universe nudged you toward a question it refuses to answer. Clearly a question carried by a solitary visitor drifting through our celestial neighbourhood. What if an object from another star decided not to follow the rules? What are the odds that 3I Atlas, a body, hundreds of billions of tons in mass, would accelerate after perihelion, a manoeuvre so rare that no other known interstellar object has ever done it? Picture it, a silent fragment gliding past the edge of Mars, a faint blue glow blooming on its sun-facing side, as if responding to something we cannot see. Let's drift a little deeper. There are moments when the universe speaks not through explosions or cataclysms, but through a small deviation, a whisper in the data, a flicker of light that refuses to behave. The interstellar object known as 3I Atlas is one such moment. It slipped into our solar system like an unnamed question gliding through the familiar orbits of our planets, with the indifference of something that has crossed far older suns than ours. For a brief time, astronomers watched it, measured it, and placed it neatly within the categories that cosmic objects are expected to occupy. And then, without fanfare, it broke one of the universe's quiet rules. When 3 Atlas approached the Sun in late October 2025, Earth was in the worst possible position to witness it. Our world was directly behind the Sun, blinded by its brilliance, unable to see anything except the overwhelming glare of our star. For nearly 6 weeks, 3 Atlas disappeared behind that wall of light. Ground-based telescopes could do nothing but wait. But in distant vantage points aboard SOHO Solar Orbiter and the Stereo Probes machines kept their silent watch. What they saw unsettled even the most cautious observers. The object brightened 5 times faster than models predicted, and unlike most comets that glow with the dusty red of scattered sunlight, this one radiated a soft, icy blue. The glow did not expand evenly either. It intensified on the sun-facing side alone, as if something in that direction was responding directly to the star's heat or pressure. When the object finally emerged again in early December, astronomers recalculated its orbit with fresh measurements. What they found was almost imperceptible on paper, but significant enough to trouble the scientific mind. Before perihelion, its path was hyperbolic, 1 Orsurus 16 in eccentricity, meaning it would sail out of the solar system forever. After perihelion, that value shifted to 0.99987, a bound orbit, not leaving, not escaping. Something had nudged it just enough to keep it here. Natural explanations were considered first because science demands that we exhaust the mundane before reaching for the extraordinary. A comet can in theory accelerate through outgassing jets of vapour acting like tiny thrusters. But to alter the trajectory of an object tens of billions of tons in mass, those jets would have to eject material in quantities that simply were not observed. There was no plume, no dramatic expansion of the coma, no visible eruption. The usual signatures of natural acceleration were absent, leaving the anomaly suspended in a space between explanation and uncertainty. Other mysteries gathered around 3I Atlas like dust in a beam of starlight. Spectroscopic readings revealed nickel vapour flowing from its surface, common enough in comets but strangely lacking its usual companion iron. In nature, nickel and iron are born together, fused in the death throes of stars, and carried through space in near equal proportion. To find nickel without iron suggests unusual chemistry or processes we rarely see outside industrial refining, and yet here was an ancient object from another system emitting grams of nickel every second with no iron in sight. The tail of the object behaved strangely as well. It pointed toward the sun for weeks, a rare phenomenon called an antitail. It can occur naturally but only under very specific geometries, and 3I Atlas seemed to stretch that explanation to its limit. Then just as suddenly the tail flipped. The timing was suspiciously close to perihelion, the same moment when its acceleration began. Coincidence is common in the universe, but certain coincidences carry the uncomfortable weight of design. In early October, as 3I Atlas passed within 30 million kilometers of Mars, multiple spacecraft were scheduled to observe it. High-resolution instruments capable of detecting details tens of kilometers across pointed toward the interstellar visitor. but the images never arrived. NASA cited delays, processing backlogs, administrative disruptions, all reasonable explanations, all unsatisfying to a public newly aware of the object's peculiar behaviour. Silence, whether intentional or incidental, has a way of amplifying curiosity. Through all this, speculation remained soft and cautious. No responsible scientist rushed to declare technology or intelligence. But neither did they dismiss the possibility entirely. Xavier Loeb, known for his controversial stance on Oumuamua, published a paper noting that natural outgassing could explain the acceleration, just not elegantly, not cleanly, not without stretching physical models to their thinnest edge. He suggested that we at least consider the question of artificiality not as a conclusion, but as a hypothesis, worthy of standing beside the natural ones while evidence accumulates. Most astronomers still favour natural explanations, but they also acknowledge that 3i Atlas sits in an uncomfortable middle ground, not as clearly cometary as 2i Borisov, not as anomalous as Oumuamua, but somehow weaving characteristics of both. A hybrid mystery, a visitor that behaves like a comet until it doesn't. As 3i Atlas moves deeper into the solar system, we continue to observe, to measure, to wait. Jupiter looms ahead, a giant whose gravity can reveal truths smaller planets cannot. If the object performs another subtle manoeuvre, another deviation too precise for mere sublimation, then the nature of its journey may shift again in our understanding. But perhaps the most humbling truth is that we may never know. The universe does not promise clarity. It offers only glimpses, patterns, soft contradictions, pieces of stories older than humanity's ability to read them. 3 Atlas may be nothing more than a relic from another star shaped by conditions we do not yet recognize, or it may be something built an instrument, a vessel, a fragment of intention travelling through space on a mission we were never meant to intercept. Either way, it reminds us of our place. Small observant creatures standing on a fragile world, looking up through the noise of our own atmosphere, trying to understand the quiet trespasses of interstellar strangers. And in that effort, watching, measuring, wondering, we become part of the same vast story. A story that does not need answers to be beautiful. A story content to remain unfinished. While the scientific community debated telescopes across the world, turned their eyes toward the returning object, collecting every photon they could before 3i Atlas drifted too far into the winter sky. Observatories in Hawaii, Chile, the Canary Islands and South Africa all contributed to a growing archive of measurements. With each passing night, astronomers refined its orbital path, its luminosity curve, its spectral fingerprints, and yet the more precisely they measured it, the more the object seemed to slip between categories resisting classification, the way a shadow resists being held. Brightness variations suggested rotation, but not a stable one. Its light curve rose and fell with a rhythm that felt oddly irregular, as though shaped by discrete vents or surfaces rather than a uniform sphere of ice, a natural comet. Possibly, but the mass estimates pushing toward tens of billions of tons made its subtle acceleration even harder to explain. A tiny force acting on an enormous body, a fingertip pushing on a mountain. Some astronomers speculated that hidden jets might erupt only when the nucleus rotated a certain way, producing thrust invisible to our instruments. Others wondered whether the sun's radiation pressure was amplified by an unusually reflective surface, and some quietly in their offices wondered whether we were witnessing the slow malfunction of something ancient, an engine sputtering for the last time, a guidance system nudging an object that no longer remembers its original purpose. In this uncertainty, the human mind drifts toward metaphor. One astrophysicist described the object as a machine built by a civilization that forgot itself. Another suggested it might be cosmic debris of technology, like a piece of a spacecraft we no longer recognize. These were not conclusions, only thoughts whispered late at night the way one speaks about ghosts, not because one believes in them, but because sometimes a story requires a haunting to feel complete. Yet for every speculative voice there were scientists firmly grounded in natural explanations. They pointed out that 2i Borisov, the other confirmed interstellar comet, was unusually pristine, suggesting that interstellar objects may simply be chemically odd compared to those born in our own system. They reminded the community that the laws of physics leave room for surprises, especially when dealing with worlds shaped under alien stars, and they emphasize that extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. A strange light, curve, a missing element, a shift in trajectory. None of these are proof of intention. Still, intention lingers in the air around anomalies. The human brain evolved to seek patterns, to search for will behind motion, meaning behind deviation. A falling leaf becomes an omen. A drifting rock becomes a messenger. An unexpected acceleration becomes a hint, a possibility, a sliver of technological origin. We are creatures caught between curiosity and caution, hope and logic. As December advanced, 3i Atlas reached its closest point to Earth 270 million kilometers away. A distance incomprehensible to daily life, yet intimate by cosmic standards. For a few nights, telescopes captured it with exceptional clarity. Its coma shimmered faint but structured. Its spectrum revealed a chemistry both familiar and foreign. Astronomers gathered the data, layered it into models, and waited for patterns to emerge. But the universe does not rush. It does not operate on our cycle of news releases nor our hunger for immediate resolution. Data arrives slowly, one photon at a time, carrying secrets across the vacuum. Scientists process those photons into numbers and those numbers into meaning, and even then, meaning is only ever provisional. The cosmos prefers to reveal itself in partial truths, as though encouraging us to stay humble in our interpretations. Meanwhile, the object continued its silent journey. The possibility of another course correction near Jupiter hung in the air like a question that had not yet decided whether it wished to be asked. Juno, the spacecraft orbiting Jupiter, waited with its instruments ready. If 3 Atlas performed even a tiny maneuver during its March 2026 flyby, Juno would record it with precision unmatched from Earth. A faint plume, a directional shift, a changed rotation. Any of these could tilt the balance of interpretation. And beneath all this scientific vigilance, a philosophical unease began to ripple. What would it mean if this object was not natural? Not alien in the fantastical sense, but alien in origin, built far away long ago by beings whose existence we can neither confirm nor imagine. Humanity has spent centuries assuming silence means isolation. But silence could just as easily be strategy or distance or indifference. Perhaps the universe is full of watchers who do not speak. Perhaps interstellar space is crossed more often than we realize, not by ships, but by artifacts, some functional, some broken, some derelict. We imagine extraterrestrial technology as gleaming machinery, intentional and purposeful. But what if most of it is debris scraps, echoes of civilizations that have already vanished? Relics drifting between stars the way fossils drift in ancient sediment. Or perhaps 3i Atlas is simply what it appears, a comet from another system shaped by processes we're only beginning to understand. A piece of planetary history far older than our own. A messenger not by intention but by existence. A reminder that our solar system is not isolated but porous, connected, open to the wanderings of the galaxy. In moments like this, we confront the limits of our understanding. We measure, we model, we hypothesize. But the universe remains unmoved by our desire for clarity. It gives us puzzles without solutions, anomalies without explanations, beauty without justification. And yet there is a strange comfort in that uncertainty. As we watch 3i Atlas drift through our sky, we are reminded that not everything must be known for us to be in awe of it. Mystery is not a flaw in the story, it is the story. Night after night as 3. Atlas moved farther from the sun's glare. Astronomers tried to reconstruct what happened during its hidden weeks near perihelion. That was the interval when it vanished behind the sun, when all ground-based surveillance fell silent, when every instrument on Earth became blind. And in that quiet absence something occurred. Something subtle, something measurable, something that changed the story. The comet should have followed its predicted arc, gliding along a hyperbolic path that would take it back into interstellar darkness. But the object did not emerge where gravity said it should. It appeared shifted, nudged, as though lightly touched by an invisible hand. A deviation too gentle for drama, but too exact to dismiss. It was a change that whispered rather than shouted. A change that raised the question no scientist wants to ask aloud, What if the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, but the result of an action we simply did not witness? Observers replayed the sequence of data, stacking frames, recalculating trajectories, searching for computational errors. But the numbers held. The anomaly persisted. The eccentricity of the orbit, once just over the critical threshold of 1, had slipped just below it, bringing 3I Atlas into the realm of bound motion. An object that had arrived from another star was now by the smallest possible margin captured by ours. Most explanations centered on outgassing the natural recoil that comets produce as ices evaporate, yet the expected signatures, blooming waterlines, energetic plumes, enhanced Comet expansion were strangely absent. The nucleus faintly visible through the dusty envelope did not show the violent behavior required to push a 33 billion-ton body off course. It was as if the comet had changed direction without leaving behind the usual fingerprints of force, traveller. There is a particular stillness that comes with such mysteries, a feeling not of fear, but of humility. The universe has always been older, larger and stranger than our assumptions allow. So when something challenges our models, we're reminded that the laws we write are only approximations maps drawn in pencil rather than ink. In the days following, the anomaly scientists turned their attention to the object's glow. Light is a language older than speech, and 3 Atlas spoke in shades that defied simplicity. Its coma glimmered with an unexpected blue, the kind associated with high-energy gas rather than reflective dust. Blue light is rare among comets. It suggests volatile chemistry, perhaps even exotic compounds carried across stellar distances. But the brightness was asymmetric, focused on the sunward face, not spread evenly. Stranger still, the anti-tail that once pointed toward the sun had flipped a direction, as though the dynamics governing its dust had shifted abruptly at perihelion. Some observers suggested this was nothing more than geometry dust particles drifting through the plane of the comet's orbit, forming strange angles, depending on the perspective from Earth. Others proposed a more dramatic interpretation, that a directional burst occurred, a jet or plume pushing the object in ways a typical comet cannot. In the corridors of certain universities, you could hear quiet speculation. Could this have been a maneuver? A burn, a correction. No one said engine. No one dared. No, but the shape of the question was there. A few weeks later, new data arrived from spectroscopic surveys. It revealed an unusually high concentration of atomic nickel, streaming from the object nickel without its usual companion ion. On Earth, certain industrial processes create metal vapors like this. In space, such occurrences are exceedingly rare. Some scientists suggested nickel carbonyl, a volatile compound that can form under unusual conditions. Others raised the possibility that we were witnessing the decomposition of something metallic, something heated, something ancient. But in science, even the boldest hypotheses must rest on the bedrock of caution. And so, the debate moved slowly, like glaciers shifting across continents. Some held to natural explanations, others entertained technological ones. Most remained suspended between the two, acknowledging that the current evidence fit neither model perfectly. Meanwhile, NASA's silence grew louder. Their high-resolution images from Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the ones taken when 3 Atlas passed near Mars, remained unreleased due to bureaucratic delays. Scientists were patient understanding the realities of data processing. The public was less forgiving. Speculation filled the gaps where information did not. People imagined structures, surfaces, patterns. They imagined signals. They imagined messages carved in light. They imagined watchers watching us. Yet the truth remained quieter than the speculation. Radio observatories found no artificial transmissions, no whispers across the hydrogen line, no mathematical pulses hidden in the static. The object was radiating only silence. But silence itself can be meaningful. Silence can be a choice. Silence can be an artifact. Silence can be a relic travelling through time. As the object approached its Jupiter encounter, scientists prepared for the possibility that the gas giant's gravity would either confirm or erase the anomaly. If 3I Atlas performed another unexpected maneuver, the universe would give us a second clue. If it did nothing, the mystery would settle into the long catalogue of unexplainable cosmic behaviour we quietly accept as part of the universe's personality. And beneath all the calculations, one truth lingered: humanity is living in a moment of profound cosmic intimacy. For the first time, we are not just observing our own system, we are witnessing the debris of other suns drift through ours. These interstellar wanderers are more than curiosities. They are chapters torn from books written around distant stars. Every one of them carries information about worlds we have never seen. In 3i Atlas, whether Comet Relic Probe or something in between, we are presented with a reminder that the galaxy is porous, alive and active. Objects cross the distances between stars not in centuries but in eons. The universe is not static, it is a river, and we, floating on a blue world at the edge of a modest spiral arm, have only just begun to notice the current. As winter shadows lengthened across observatory domes, 3i Atlas continued its slow climb away from the sun, carrying with it a silence that felt almost intentional. Every night astronomers gathered fresh measurements, plotting faint points of light against star fields, refining the trajectory one decimal place at a time. But the more its orbit sharpened into focus, the more the object seemed to evade the boundaries of expectation. It behaved like a comet in some ways, unlike one in others. It belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. Somewhere high above the clouds, the Hubble Space Telescope captured delicate images of the thin gas enveloping the object. The coma spread in soft, uneven layers, as though shaped by forces intermittent and selective. At certain angles, the object glinted, revealing a reflectivity that puzzled photometric models. At others, it dimmed inexplicably, as though turning a hidden face away from us. Instruments on the James Webb Space Telescope added another layer of complexity, faint spectral hints that suggested unfamiliar ices or metallic compounds not commonly found in solar system comets. The data hinted at a symmetry, chemistry and structure that resisted any clean categorization. Traveller there is a kind of humility in watching scientists face a question that refuses to align with their most elegant equations. It is not failure, it is the natural rhythm of discovery. The cosmos teaches us patience. It teaches us to sit with the unknown without demanding immediate clarity. In this way, 3i Atlas became less an object and more a meditation, an invitation to breathe in the vastness around us and accept that mystery is part of the fabric of reality. Meanwhile, in quiet corners of research, institutions teams revisited the famous precedent, Oumuamua. That first interstellar visitor had also accelerated slightly in ways that defied traditional explanations. At the time, scientists proposed hydrogen outgassing nitrogen ice sublimation, unusual geometry, even light sail behaviour. None of these interpretations fully satisfied the data, but they created a mosaic of possibilities, each compelling, each incomplete. Now, with 3 Atlas showing similar inconsistencies, those unresolved debates resurfaced with renewed urgency. The question grew heavier: if 2 interstellar objects in a row displayed anomalies, maybe these anomalies were not exceptions at all. Maybe they were telling us something about how other solar systems operate, something our models are not yet prepared to grasp. Perhaps comets born under different stars obey different chemical laws, or perhaps more provocatively, some interstellar wanderers are not entirely natural, not machines in the science fiction sense, no gleaming hulls, no transmissions, no signal-seeking conversation, but artifacts, relics, technology so old or worn that it now behaves more like geology than machinery. A ship that crumbled over 1 million years could easily appear as stone. An engine silent for eons could look indistinguishable from a comet. A probe built by a civilization that no longer exists could drift in obeying only the last commands etched into it long before Earth formed its first ocean. Most scientists refrain from pursuing such ideas publicly. The universe is vast enough to fill our imaginations without resorting to speculation, and yet even within caution, there is room for wonder. The mind wanders because the cosmos gives it space to wander. As 3i Atlas slowly crossed the constellation Virgo, the nightly images from observatories showed its tail stretching thin, almost ghost-like. Dust streamed behind it in a tapered thread, tracing a path through vacuum like a memory slowly drifting away. Some nights the tail shimmered with faint blue highlights. Other nights it collapsed into near invisibility. This variability added another puzzle. Was the object rotating erratically? Was it shedding material only in intermittent bursts? Or was sunlight reflecting off a non-uniform surface, one that changed depending on which side faced us? Even the brightest minds could only theorize. No definitive answers emerged. Just the soft movement of an object older than our history gliding through our star's domain with a quiet that felt almost courteous, as if it did not wish to disturb anything more than necessary. Through all this observation, the emotional landscape of the scientific community shifted. What began as curiosity evolved into something more contemplative. Researchers described a sense of witnessing, not just studying something significant, even if they couldn't articulate why. A reminder that even in the age of high-resolution telescopes and precision spectroscopy, the universe can still mystify us with a single drifting point of light. And as data accumulated, it became clear that no single model could fully explain the anomaly. Outgassing remained possible but lacked strong evidence. A reflective surface remained plausible but required geometry that seemed unlikely. A fragmenting nucleus could explain the acceleration, but the coma did not show the hallmarks of fresh debris. Every explanation worked only halfway, like keys that fit into locks but refused to turn. Yet observer it is in these halfway explanations that the essence of science lives. Not in certainty, but in pursuit. Not in knowing, but in caring enough to keep looking. The cosmos is not obligated to reveal its truth, but it allows us occasionally generously to glimpse the edges of that truth, if only for a moment. As the days passed, the upcoming encounter with Jupiter loomed like the turning of a page. If the object adjusted course again, even by a fraction, the planet's massive gravity would magnify the effect, offering a clear signature that something unexpected was guiding the motion. If nothing happened, the anomaly might yet fade into the long tapestry of natural cosmic behavior. Either outcome would deepen our understanding. Either outcome would bring its own kind of peace. For now, the object drifted quietly onward, caught in the pull of a star that was not its own, carrying with it the chemistry of another world, the dust of another dawn, the silence of another sky. And as humanity watched this visitor cross the dark ocean above, we were reminded once more of a simple truth. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be witnessed. As 3I Atlas journeyed farther from the sun, its presence in the sky grew fainter, yet its significance deepened. With distance came perspective. The object was no longer merely a scientific target, it became a moving mirror, held up to humanity's understanding of the cosmos. Observatories switched to longer exposures, integrating faint light for hours, letting photons that had travelled millions of kilometres settle gently onto detectors. Each image, though exceptionally dim, carried the weight of something ancient drifting through the solar system with unhurried purpose. In university offices illuminated by the blue glow of computer screens, researchers revisited the object's path again and again, performing orbital integrations that stretched backward thousands of years, then millions, then tens of millions. They traced its incoming velocity, its angle of approach, the slight vertical incline above the ecliptic plane. These traces pointed to no single stellar birthplace, but to a region thick with old stars, ancient suns, whose planets likely formed long before Earth cooled enough to grow its first mineral crust. If 3I Atlas came from such a region, then the object might carry within it a chemical story older than our solar system. Its composition, its nickel-rich vapor, its faint volatile signature could reflect processes unknown to us. Not alien in intent, but alien in origin. But the possibility lingered that origin and intent were not mutually exclusive, that an object could be both natural and altered, both ancient and guided, a relic of a world whose oceans evaporated before Earth's continents assembled, a probe launched by hands long turned to dust. Such ideas were never published in journals, not because they were foolish, but because journals require evidence, and evidence requires proximity, and proximity was something this object denied us. Yet even among the most cautious researchers, the question floated softly in the gaps between sentences. If we are not alone, would we even recognize another civilization's traces? Would we know the difference between a comet and a message, between a fragment of technology and a fragment of ice? Meanwhile, another kind of silence grew, the silence of political institutions, of agencies navigating a world where information must be both shared and controlled. NASA's delayed release of the Mars flyby images became an object of curiosity in its own right. People imagine metallic surfaces, geometric shadowing impossible symmetries. They imagined the kind of discovery that would rewrite textbooks and destabilize worldviews. The truth, as always, was simpler and more complicated: bureaucratic delays, funding interruptions, cautious review cycles. But in a world hungry for narrative, delay becomes meaning. Silence becomes implication. Still, scientists continued their work. They gathered spectra. They compared dust profiles. They cross-referenced Tudor, Ayer, Borisov and Oumuamua, building a tentative taxonomy for interstellar debris. A pattern was emerging, one that challenged our expectations. Interstellar objects seemed to be both fewer and stranger than models predicted, and each one carried a different kind of oddity, as though shaped by the unique histories of their forgotten homes. Through this growing archive of anomalies, the Atlas drifted quietly onward, its trajectory slowly bending under Jupiter's gravitational field. In a matter of months it would pass near the gas giant, a distance not close enough for impact, yet close enough to alter its path dramatically. And if the object were to accelerate again, if even a tiny non-gravitational adjustment occurred, Juno would detect it. This anticipation built a kind of calm tension across the scientific community, the way one feels when waiting for a star to emerge from behind the limb of a planet. Amid this waiting, people began to ask an older question: why now? Why, after billions of years, are we suddenly observing interstellar visitors in rapid sequence? Perhaps our telescopes have finally become sensitive enough. Perhaps these objects have always been passing by unnoticed. Or perhaps something else has changed something in the distribution of interstellar matter, or in the architecture of distant planetary systems. Or perhaps an intelligence we do not yet understand leaves behind traces that only now approach our awareness. These thoughts unfolded not in urgency but in quiet contemplation. The universe is vast, and intelligence, if it exists elsewhere, may not mirror our own priorities. What we interpret as anomaly might be accident. What we interpret as design might be coincidence. What we interpret as signal might be silence shaped by unfamiliar physics. As 3 Atlas moved through the outer inner solar system, a strange sense of intimacy grew. It was as if humanity were watching a traveller from far away cross, briefly through our candlelit room, leaving behind a draft that flickers the flame but gives no hint of its destination. The object did not seek attention. It did not alter its behaviour for our benefit. It passed through our region of space the way a migrating bird passes through a valley, unaware of the eyes turned toward it from the ground. And yet, in that lack of acknowledgement, there was a profound lesson. We are not observers of the universe. We are participants in it. Small, transient, luminous creatures made of the same atoms that drift between stars. When we look at 3 Atlas, we are not watching something foreign. We are witnessing a faint reflection of our own fate. One day our machines may drift across interstellar distances. One day a relic of Earth may wander through the sky of another civilization's dawn. Perhaps somewhere else in the galaxy, a distant mind will puzzle over an object from our world, an object that does not behave quite as expected. In this way, 3i Atlas reminds us that every traveller becomes a mystery when far enough from home. As 3i Atlas slipped deeper into the cold regions beyond Mars, a curious shift occurred not in the object itself, but in the way humanity perceived it. What began as a scientific anomaly gradually transformed into a kind of collective meditation. People started staying awake through the night, listening to live streams from observatories, watching faint white pixels against a velvet sky. The object had become a symbol not of fear, but of possibility. A reminder that the universe still contains secrets untouched by human certainty. Scientists, too, found themselves moving between data and reflection. They examined the coma, noting how it expanded and contracted in a rhythm that felt almost alive. They studied the tail, observing moments when it fragmented into filaments, then recombined as if responding to subtle shifts in the solar wind. They measured the object's rotation period, perplexed by slight irregularities that suggested an asymmetric form or perhaps internal structures that influenced its motion. Some nights the object brightened unexpectedly, other nights it dimmed without cause. These subtle changes became the quiet heartbeat of an enigma. In their private notes, researchers described a sense that the object was behaving a word that implies intention, though none was meant. But language has a way of revealing our subconscious hypotheses long before we formalize them. The human mind seeks agency in patterns, story, and motion. A drifting rock can become a messenger. A spectral anomaly can become a sign, and something that accelerates when it should not can become a question that stirs ancient instincts. Meanwhile, the debate over composition continued. Nickel continued to show in the spectral readings, each detection sharpening the puzzle. Without iron to accompany it, theories unravelled. Some suggested that the object could have originated from a planetary core stripped bare by a cataclysm. Others proposed that interstellar radiation had separated the elements over millions of years. A few entertained the idea that the nickel vapour could come from engineered alloys, weathering in space a thought too speculative for publication, yet too compelling to fully dismiss. These chemical mysteries lingered in the laboratories quiet as frost. But elsewhere, a different kind of silence took root. SETI's radio telescope scanned the object across multiple frequencies, listening for patterns, pulses, any hint of artificial signal. They found nothing. But nothing in this context was itself a statement. If 3i Atlas held technology, it was dormant. If it held memory, it was silent. If it held intention, it was subtle beyond our detection. There is a humbling truth here: intelligence is not obligated to reveal itself. A probe crossing the galaxy may not be designed to communicate. It may observe and remain mute. It may function long after its creators have vanished. It may drift, not as a message, but as a remnant. And yet, even in silence, something ancient can still speak. As January nights passed, astronomers began preparing for the next major event, the Jupiter flyby. The planet's immense gravity would tug at 3i Atlas, bending its path, with a force far greater than Earth could apply. If the object performed another anomalous maneuver, another small acceleration in a direction not aligned with solar pressure or thermal jets, the effect would amplify under Jupiter's pull. Juno orbiting the gas giant carried instruments sensitive enough to detect even the faintest plume or shift. Speculation brewed softly. Would the object turn slightly? Would it shed new material? Would it change brightness in ways that hint at internal processes? Some imagined that approaching Jupiter might activate something dormant within the object. Others believed nothing unusual would happen at all. But beneath all predictions, a deeper thought quietly threaded its way through the scientific discourse. This might be the first interstellar visitor we observe entering a gravitational relationship with another planet. Not a passing tourist, but a temporary guest drawn in by the architecture of our system. A visitor whose course now intertwined with ours in ways subtle but profound. This idea carried an unexpected weight. If 3 Atlas became bound to Jupiter's domain, it would stay in our cosmic neighbourhood for decades, perhaps centuries. Future generations might observe it long after we are gone. Children yet unborn might grow up knowing it not as an anomaly, but as a familiar member of the solar system, an adopted object, a naturalised wanderer, a foreign fragment now woven into our story. In its drifting silence, the object invited humanity to consider scale once again temporal, spatial, existential. Our species measures time in years and lifetimes. The universe measures in orbits and epochs. We interpret anomalies as urgent puzzles to solve. The cosmos treats them as ordinary ripples in an endless sea. The more astronomers studied 3i Atlas, the more they realised that uncertainty itself was the most honest conclusion. The object's origin was unclear. Its chemistry was irregular. Its trajectory was peculiar. And yet none of these traits violated the laws of physics. They simply stretched our models, reminding us that the universe is allowed to be stranger than we expect. In that strangeness, there is a quiet form of beauty, one that does not rely on revelation or proof, one that does not demand resolution, one that allows mystery to coexist with science. The object became less about what it was and more about what it represented, a glimpse of a galaxy, where other worlds exist, other stars live and die, and other histories unfold beyond our reach. 3i Atlas asked nothing of us. It did not signal or threaten or reveal. It simply moved through our sky carrying the weight of a story older than human language. And in watching it, humanity found itself looking not just outward, but inward toward its own fragility, its own curiosity, its own longing to belong in a universe that remains overwhelmingly silent. As winter deepened on Earth, the silence around 3i Atlas began to feel almost intentional. The object moved steadily through the dark, its faint halo shimmering against the emptiness like a distant lantern carried by a traveller from another age. Observatories monitored it night after night, charting its subtle changes, watching for any new deviation in brightness or motion. Yet beneath their measurements lived a simple truth. Most of what mattered remained hidden, wrapped inside the object like a memory too old to name. Scientists immersed themselves in the data, but even they admitted privately that something about this object evoked a strange calm. It was not the excitement of discovery nor the thrill of imminent revelation. It was something quieter, the sense of standing at the edge of a vast ocean, listening to waves older than time. A recognition that the universe was not chaotic nor hostile, but simply immense, and that humanity, fragile as candlelight, was allowed to witness a rare moment in that immensity. The object's behaviour during perihelion remained one of the most puzzling aspects. A slight acceleration too small to be dramatic, too large to be dismissed. It was as if 3i Atlas had exhaled at the perfect moment, shifting its path with the precision of a quiet, unseen force. Natural or not, the effect echoed through the solar system. Gravity accepted the change and rewrote the object's future accordingly, bending its new trajectory like a page turning on its own. This raised questions that scientists could not quite silence. Could a natural object time such a release so elegantly? Could random jets of sublimating gas truly align with such precision during the single moment when the Earth maneuver, natural or artificial, would matter most? The debates were careful, measured, grounded in physics. But beneath the formulas, another thought lingered. In space, even small actions can whisper intention. Still, the discipline of science demanded humility. Models were refined, simulations rerun. Every hypothesis was tested not for its beauty, but for its fidelity to the laws of motion. Observers reminded themselves that comets were unpredictable, that interstellar objects came from chemical and thermal environments far beyond our experience. The simplest explanation remained the same: an unusual comet behaving in an unusual way. The human mind, shaped by story and meaning, is sometimes too eager to see purpose in randomness. And yet the universe has surprised us before. As the days passed, the faint blue glow noted earlier in October continued to perplex researchers. Blue emissions in comets are rare, generally associated with specific gases, illuminated under unique solar conditions. But the asymmetry in 3i Atlas's brightening, focused on one side facing the sun, felt more like a spotlight than a flare. It was as though the object had turned a single face toward the light, revealing only a sliver of its true nature. Perhaps it was rotation. Perhaps an irregular surface composition. Perhaps something we have not yet imagined. But the glow persisted in memory, a small disturbance in the calm of scientific expectation. Even after the object dimmed again, astronomers recalled that brief flare the way one remembers a strange dream, faint but impossible to shake. Meanwhile, the speculation around the unreleased high-rise images grew into a shadow around the scientific conversation. Most researchers insisted that bureaucratic delays, not secrets, were the cause, and yet the absence of images created a vacuum. Silence, after all, is the universe's favourite canvas. People fill it with meaning, with hope, with fear, with whatever echoes inside them. NASA's lack of updates became its own quiet character in the story. Not an antagonist, but a reminder that even within human systems, mystery arises not from conspiracy, but from complexity. Data must be processed. Images must be calibrated. Institutions must follow protocol. And sometimes in the long pause between information and release, imagination grows wild. Travellers listening to this story might wonder why humanity reacts this way, why the unknown stirs both excitement and unease. It is because the unknown reflects us. We gaze into space and see our own questions mirrored back. Who else exists? How long have they been wandering? Are we early in the universe's story or late? When we look at 3i Atlas, we're not just observing an object, we're observing possibility itself. As February approached, attention shifted toward Jupiter, that immense world of storms and ancient bands, a planet so large it could hold more than 1,000 Earths, now played a quiet role in the unfolding narrative. Jupiter's gravity, patient and unbending, would soon reach out with invisible fingers and test the object's trajectory. If any hidden pushes or adjustments were occurring, they would reveal themselves there in the subtle curve of a path passing through a gravitational field too large to disguise motion. Juno, orbiting the gas giant with tireless precision, awaited its moment. The spacecraft had witnessed auroras the size of continents, storms, older than civilizations, and magnetic fields that carved invisible sculptures in the charged space around Jupiter. Now it would turn its instruments toward a wandering visitor, a machine built by human hands studying an object, possibly forged in another star's cradle. Two travellers from different origins crossing paths in the cold silence. Scientists prepared for what they might see. Perhaps nothing unusual at all, perhaps a faint plume, perhaps a slight change in rotation, perhaps a shift in brightness. Each possibility carried meaning. Even nothing would be a result of nature's way of reminding us that not all mysteries are signals. In the background of all these preparations, humanity quietly recalibrated its sense of scale. People who had never cared about astronomy found themselves reading updates, watching animations, listening to nighttime explanations from calm-voiced astronomers. Something about 3i Atlas had softened the boundaries between science and wonder. It had turned millions of strangers into observers, inviting them to look upward, to imagine, to reflect. Late at night, alone at their desks, some astronomers allowed themselves private thoughts they would never publish. What if interstellar objects are more common than we think? What if some of them carry remnants of lost civilizations? What if the galaxy is filled with artifacts adrift in the dark, silent witnesses to stories billions of years long? These thoughts were not conclusions. They were simply the dreams that arise when one stares too long at the universe, and perhaps dreams are data of their own kind. As 3, Atlas continued its slow arc across the darkness, astronomers turned their attention not only to its motion, but to its silence. A silence that felt older than the dust from which it formed. SETI pointed its dishes toward the object, listening to the hydrogen line at 1420 MHz, the frequency, where if any civilization wished to announce itself, the universe would most easily hear. But the object offered nothing. No pulse, no whisper, no coded rhythm folded into static. Only background noise, the soft hum of the cosmos itself. To many researchers this was comforting. Silence meant normalcy, and normalcy meant safety. Yet to others the lack of signal did not rule anything out. A probe, if it existed, might not be transmitting. It might be in a dormant state, conserving energy, or designed to observe quietly without intention to communicate. The universe, after all, does not promise transparency. Sometimes it speaks through absence, letting the void carry its meaning. But while instruments heard nothing, telescopes continued to see everything they could. Every flicker of light, every subtle shift in the coma's shape, every deviation from predicted brightness curves. The James Webb Space Telescope, peering from its cold vantage beyond the moon, collected spectra that revealed chemistry both familiar and strange. Carbon dioxide, yes. Traces of volatile compounds, yes. And then, unexpectedly, the nickel. Nickel without iron. An imbalance that shouldn't exist in natural icy bodies forged in starlight. On Earth, that ratio only appears in carefully controlled industrial processes. In space, such chemistry is possible, but exceedingly rare. Astronomers debated the anomaly late into the night, leaning back in their chairs beneath the blue glow of computer screens, understanding that this one detail could unravel the entire story or confirm a new one. But they also understood that cosmic chemistry often defies our terrestrial intuition. Interstellar objects are born in environments where temperatures, pressures, and radiation fluxes differ wildly from the cradle of our own solar system. Even so, the nickel signature clung to the data like a quiet riddle. A reminder that in the vastness of the Milky Way there are laboratories far older, stranger, and more patient than ours. Meanwhile, the mystery of the anti-tail lingered in the minds of observers. A tail pointing toward the sun, an inversion of cometary behaviour rare but not unheard of. For weeks it held this configuration, stubbornly resisting easy explanation. Then, just as suddenly, it shifted. A graceful pivot aligning itself in the direction comets normally obey. Some called it an optical illusion, others an effect of dust particle geometry, and some in private conversations spoken with a half laugh wondered whether the object had stopped breaking. But such musings were whispers at the edges of scientific rooms, thoughts shared only when the lights dimmed and the data paused for breath. The more the story unfolded, the more it seemed to expose the vulnerability of human knowledge. We are proud of our equations, our telescopes, our predictive models. And yet one object the size of a small mountain drifts through our solar system, and suddenly the limits of that knowledge become visible, not as failure, but as invitation. A gentle reminder from the universe that understanding is not a place we arrive, but a path we walk. This humility became even more apparent when the mass calculations were revisited. The numbers varied depending on assumptions, density, reflectivity, nucleus diameter, thermal behaviour. A more compact nucleus would change the expected acceleration. A porous one would alter outgassing profiles. Every variable pushed the story in a slightly different direction, and each possibility was both plausible and insufficient. In quiet observatories, the calculations unfolded like meditations, scientists writing numbers with the same patience monks once used copying scripture. Every digit a prayer for clarity, every equation a gesture toward understanding. Yet the outcome remained the same. The acceleration could be natural, but it strained the boundaries of what nature typically allows. Then came the question of origin. If 3I Atlas had drifted from Barnard's star, it would have travelled for tens of thousands of years, through the interstellar medium, a journey long enough for ice to fracture, for dust to erode, for cosmic rays to carve invisible scars across its surface. If it had come from the galactic thick disk, it could be a billion-year-old relic older than Earth's continents. If from an unseen dwarf star, it might carry the chemical signature of a system we may never discover. To trace its path backward through space was to trace the fading wake of a ship long after it had passed. The further astronomers pushed into the past, the more uncertainty grew, blossoming like a nebula expanding outward. Eventually, the object's trail dissolved into statistical fog swallowed by time. Beyond that point, only imagination could continue the journey. And imagination, too, has its place in science. Even the most cautious researchers acknowledged that 3I Atlas stirred something different in the human mind. A sense that perhaps interstellar objects are more than debris. Perhaps they are messengers, fragments from worlds that no longer exist. Frozen libraries carrying the chemical fingerprints of ancient suns. Although rarely spoken aloud, perhaps they are tools left behind intentionally on missions so long, so slow, that no living species remembers launching them. Whether or not these ideas were true mattered less than the shift they created in human perspective. People looked up more often, they read more, asked more, wondered more. The night sky, which had so long been a backdrop, became a presence again, a companion, vast and quiet. As 3I Atlas approached the region where Jupiter's gravity would test its true behaviour, even the most seasoned scientists found themselves pausing during their nightly routines, stepping outside for a moment longer than usual, searching the sky, though they knew they would not see it. There was nothing visible to the naked eye, and yet the act of looking felt significant. A small ritual of curiosity, a reminder that not all mysteries ask to be solved, some simply ask to be honoured. In private moments, researchers admitted they felt a strange gratitude toward the object. Gratitude for the questions it revived. Gratitude for the humility it inspired. Gratitude for the way it briefly unified a scattered human species under a shared sense of wonder. For now, 3. Atlas drifted on silent and precise, as though following a path written long before human eyes first opened to the stars. Night after night, as telescopes continued their quiet vigilance, the world began to sense that the mystery of 3 Atlas was no longer confined to scientific journals or observatory logs. It had seeped into conversations, into late-night thoughts, into the quiet spaces of human curiosity. people who had never before paused to consider the mechanics of a comet now found themselves lying awake wondering how something so small could shift the expectations of an entire planet. There was an intimacy to it, a solitary object from a distant star drifting silently through our solar system, carrying nothing but questions. The closer 3I Atlas moved toward the outer regions of the inner solar system, the more researchers revisited the events of its approach to Mars. That close pass on the 2nd and 3rd of October, only 30 million kilometres from a world we have studied for centuries, had been a missed opportunity in the eyes of many. The high-rise camera aboard the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter could have seen details no Earth-based telescope could hope to resolve. Cracks in the nucleus, jets of gas, rotational patterns, perhaps even unexpected geometries. But the images never arrived, delayed by a government shutdown that froze communication channels and redirected personnel. The universe had offered a moment of clarity, and human systems, tangled and imperfect, had simply been unprepared. In the absence of those images, speculation grew like frost on a window pane, thin, fragile, but inevitable. Some imagined a metallic structure revealed in the data. Others pictured strange reflections or unnatural shadows. No evidence supported these visions, but the lack of information left a vacuum, and the human mind, ever uncomfortable with emptiness, filled it with possibility. Scientists understood this tendency and worked to temper it with caution, reminding the world that data takes time, that silence is not deception. Yet even they felt a quiet yearning for answers that seemed always just beyond reach. Meanwhile, spectroscopic analyses revealed the now famous nickel anomaly, a steady release 4 grams per second of pure nickel vapor with almost no accompanying iron. Natural, possibly exotic. Almost certainly, if the object truly contained nickel carbonyl, as some hypotheses suggested, then it might represent a form of chemistry unfamiliar to our solar system. Carbon monoxide and nickel bonded in conditions no earthbound laboratory could ever fully replicate. But this compound, if present, carried its own whisper of strangeness. On Earth, nickel carbonyl is manufactured, intentional, industrial, a designed molecule. To find its signature drifting from an interstellar object was unsettling, not because it suggested intelligence, but because it reminded us that nature too can appear engineered. This became a recurring theme of the 3I Atlas debates. The universe often mirrors intention without meaning to. Structures that appear artificial can arise from pressure, heat, and time. Patterns that look deliberate can be carved by nothing more than mathematics, acting on dust. Scientists had learned this lesson before when pulsars were first detected, and mistaken for alien beacons when perfect geometric crystals formed in caves without the touch of human hands. And yet the nickel refused to settle cleanly into any known category. It hovered in the data like a quiet challenge. The antitail too refused to fully align with explanation. Initially dismissed as an artifact of viewing geometry, the persistence of the sunward-pointing feature intrigued observers long after it vanished. It reminded them that comets are not static bodies but evolving systems, rotating, shedding, reforming, responding to sunlight and solar wind like leaves trembling under a changing breeze. But if the anti-tail had been a plume, a jet or a vent on the sun-facing side, then its disappearance after perihelion suggested a behaviour more complex than simple outgassing, as if the object had exhaled and then fallen silent again. While the comet moved farther from the sun, the world became increasingly aware of just how much hinges on perspective. For weeks, Earth had been blind to the object's most critical moment, its perihelion, its closest approach where the acceleration took place. And this blindness was not symbolic, but literal. If 3 Atlas had adjusted its trajectory during that hidden window, humanity would have no direct images of the event, only the aftermath, only numbers, eccentricity, reduced velocity altered, orbit transformed. Perhaps that is why so many felt drawn to the unfolding story. It echoed the way people experience their own lives, blind to certain moments, forced to interpret meaning from incomplete data. We rarely witness the turning points while they happen. Often, we only notice change after it has already carved its path into the future. As the weeks passed, scientists found themselves comparing 3 Atlas to its predecessors, 1 Oumuamua and 2I Borisov. Each had entered our solar system with its own signature, the cigar-shaped enigma, with its unexplained acceleration, and the pristine comet that behaved exactly as models predicted. And now a third traveller, neither predictable nor fully anomalous, a hybrid of the familiar and the unexpected. It was as though the universe were teaching us in stages, presenting mysteries, one increment at a time, so humanity could adjust to the widening horizon of its knowledge. Some astronomers joked softly that if interstellar visitors came in threes, a fourth would surely arrive, and perhaps it would be the one to answer all the questions. Others feared that this slow escalation first, strange then clear, then stranger still hinted at an underlying pattern. But most simply watched with the steady patience that astronomy demands, allowing silence to play its part in discovery. As December merged into January, the object slipped into a region of space where Jupiter's influence would soon take hold. Models predicted a close approach in March 54 million kilometers a distance, where even small forces could reveal themselves against Jupiter's immense gravitational canvas. Juno, with its sensitive detectors and unblinking orbit, waited silently for its role in the encounter. A spacecraft built by human hands circling a world beyond storms, preparing to study an object built by nature, or perhaps by something else entirely. If any hidden adjustments in 3i Atlas's path existed, Jupiter would expose them. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in the gentle way gravity always reveals truth by tugging by, bending by curving motion into new shapes. In the language of orbits, truth is simply movement made visible, and through all of this the object remained indifferent, silent, unhurried, a visitor that neither sought attention nor avoided it, a wanderer carrying the dust of another sun. As winter began to fade and the first signs of a new year settled over observatories across the world, the conversation around 3i Atlas shifted from speculation to introspection. Scientists who had once drawn strict lines between the natural and the artificial were now speaking more softly, more carefully, acknowledging how delicate such distinctions become when we confront something born beyond our own star. The universe, they realise, cares nothing for the categories the human mind tries to impose. It moves according to laws older than language, older than thought, older than the chemistry that shaped our bones. Still, the data accumulated. Every new image, every spectral analysis, every refined orbital parameter added another faint brushstroke to the portrait of 3i Atlas. And yet the portrait never resolved into clarity. It remained blurred at the edges like the face of someone turning just as a camera shutter closes. You could see enough to recognise presence, but not enough to define identity. The uncertainty reminded researchers of a truth they often forget, that science is not a march towards certainty, but a dance with it. Certainty steps forward, uncertainty steps back. The rhythm is endless, and both partners are necessary. As the object moved farther into the outer regions of the inner solar system, the peculiarities of its behaviour came into sharper mathematical focus. Orbital modelers noted how the trajectory bent just slightly more than expected, enough to raise eyebrows but not enough to demand conclusions. It was a kind of cosmic shrug, a motion that could be natural, could be anomalous, could be both. The universe has always refused to simplify itself for human comfort. This ambiguity invited a deeper reflection on human perception. When faced with incomplete information, the mind instinctively reaches for patterns, for stories, for meaning. Sometimes it finds truth, sometimes it finds projection, and sometimes, perhaps most beautifully, it finds wonder. Wonder is not ignorance. It is the recognition that something exceeds our ability to fully grasp it. It is the awareness that knowledge has edges, and beyond those edges lies possibility. 3i Atlas hovered near those edges. Even the nickel anomaly, which had ignited so much debate, became less a clue and more a symbol. In the vastness of space, chemistry can take forms unimaginable on Earth. A molecule that seems artificial here may form naturally there, or vice versa. The cosmos has had billions of years to experiment with pressure, with radiation, with the death throes of stars. It has created structures we have not yet discovered, compounds. We cannot synthesize systems we cannot predict. To judge an interstellar object by Earth's standards is to read a book in a language we barely know the alphabet of. and yet the human heart resists giving up on the possibility of being observed, of not being alone, of the universe being populated not just with matter, but with meaning. This longing is not unscientific. It is human. It is the quiet hope that intelligence might be a universal phenomenon, not an isolated accident on a small blue world. As the object approached the region where Jupiter's gravitational pull would reshape its motion, a gentle tension settled over the global astronomical community. Not fear, just anticipation. A sense that the next bend in the orbit might tell a story no equation could predict. Juno circling Jupiter with monk-like devotion prepared to watch. Its instruments sensitive enough to read the faint glow of auroras, and the subtle spin of charged particles would soon focus on the interstellar traveller. The spacecraft seemed almost like an emissary, one wanderer greeting another in the vastness. The scientists who monitored Juno's data streams found themselves imagining unrealistic scenes late at night, the probe drifting through a cloud of unusual ions, detecting metals that hadn't existed on Earth for 4 billion years, glimpsing faint structural shadows as 3 Atlas passed. They knew such images were unlikely, but the mind wanders easily in the quiet hours of research when humanity seems small and the cosmos seems impossibly vast. In these moments, even professional skepticism softened, not into belief but into openness, into the quiet understanding that the universe has room for more possibilities than we can currently imagine. A scientist can be rigorous and still be humble. They can respect the data and also acknowledge what the data does not yet reveal. And there was much it did not reveal. The origin of the object remained shrouded in uncertainty. Models traced its path back toward Barnard's star, toward the thick disk, toward unnamed red dwarfs, hidden behind curtains of dust. Each model offered a different story. Each story held its own poetry. Perhaps the object was a comet expelled from a chaotic young system, flung outward by gravitational turmoil. Perhaps it was a fragment of a shattered world whose star had long since faded. Perhaps it was older than Earth, older than the continents, older than the first seeds of life in our oceans. Or perhaps it was something else, something that did not fit neatly into geological or astronomical categories, an artifact born in a civilization now extinguished, a remnant of a technology designed to endure the erasure of time, a witness carrying ancient intentions. No evidence required these explanations, but none entirely dismissed them either. The uncertainty itself became the story. People across the world found comfort in this ambiguity. There was something soothing in the idea that not everything must be solved, that some phenomena exist simply to remind us of scale. 3 Atlas was a mountain of ice and rock, or metal, or something stranger, moving at 60 kilometers per second through a void where human presence was a statistical whisper. To watch it was to feel both small and connected, fragile yet part of something immensely larger. In quiet rooms under soft lamps, many found themselves thinking of childhood, the first time they looked at the night sky and understood that it stretched forever. Atlas returned that feeling to them, a reminder that mystery is not a threat but a gift, that uncertainty is not a failure of knowledge but a doorway to wonder. And so the world waited. The telescopes kept watching, Juno prepared, the comet drifted, and humanity listened to numbers, to silence, to the faint hum of curiosity that threads through every scientific endeavour. As the days grew closer to Jupiter's gravitational reach, a subtle shift began to occur, not in the skies, but in the minds of those who followed 3 Atlas with quiet devotion. The object, once just another point of interest among the thousands that cross our telescopes each year, had become something more intimate. It had become a mirror. In its uncertainty, people recognized their own. In its silence, they felt their own unanswered questions echo back at them. The closer it came to Jupiter's domain, the more its future diverged into branching paths. Some predicted it would continue outward, after the flyby slipping back into the interstellar dark with only a slight bend in its trajectory, a brief guess departing as quietly as it had arrived. Others argued that if the anomalous acceleration persisted even subtly, Jupiter's gravity might amplify the deviation, pulling the object inward, perhaps into a long looping orbit around the Sun. A few whispered about the third possibility capture, A permanent new moon, a visitor choosing to stay willingly or not. Most scientists dismiss these ideas as unlikely. Nature tends to favour simplicity, and a simple outward journey was the most probable. But in late-night discussions, often after the formal meetings had ended and the coffee had turned cold, people allowed themselves to imagine stranger outcomes. What if the object behaved unpredictably near Jupiter? What if Juno recorded something unusual, not dramatic, but subtle enough to hint at a hidden mechanism? In science, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But imagination requires nothing at all, only the willingness to wander. The observatories continued their steady vigil. In Hawaii, atop Mauna Kea, the domes opened each night like unblinking eyes. The thin air carried the faint hum of cooling systems, a modern counterpart to the ancient stones beneath them, stones that had once watched other wanderers cross these same skies. The astronomers within the domes worked quietly, their attention focused on the delicate dance between gravity and light, unfolding millions of kilometers away. The comet's brightness curve fluctuated with a rhythm that felt almost organic. Some nights it brightened slightly as if exhaling, other nights it dimmed as if resting. These changes were expected for a body shedding volatile material, yet they carried a poetic undertone like the heartbeat of something alive, even though everyone knew it was nothing of the kind. But in the vast emptiness of space, even a cold mountain of ice can feel animate when watched long enough. Meanwhile, data analysts began revisiting old assumptions about cometary behaviour. They re-examined the concept of outgassing modelling, how CO2 and other volatiles might escape an interstellar body with a chemical composition unlike any comet we have catalogued. Some models suggested that pockets of trapped gas could create thrust pulses that were brief, directional and powerful enough to alter the orbit. Others suggested that fragmentation, even if invisible at great distances, might impart forces similar to those detected. But none of these explanations satisfied every observation. Each theory explained part of the anomaly, but not all. A small piece always remained outside the equation, unaccounted for, like a faint shadow that persists no matter how many lights are turned on. And so, attention shifted again to the origin question. The object's exact origin was drifting further from reach, lost in the turbulence of stellar motions, gravitational encounters, and statistical ambiguity. Yet the more uncertain the past became, the more alluring it felt. If 3i Atlas had come from an ancient star system billions of years old, then perhaps its chemical composition preserved relics from a time when the galaxy was still young. If it had come from a region shaped by supernovae, then maybe the nickel was a remnant of violent stellar death. Each theory was less a conclusion than a poem about cosmic history. Some scientists began framing the object not as a mystery to be solved, but as a narrative to be interpreted, a wandering archive, a frozen message, a piece of the galaxy's autobiography drifting into our neighbourhood, for reasons neither random nor intentional, but simply statistical, because in a universe, this large, even the improbable must eventually occur. Others took a more philosophical view. They suggested that objects like 3i Atlas remind humanity that we are not observers standing outside the universe, analysing it from a safe distance, but participants within it. Our instruments are extensions of our senses, and our interpretations are shaped by the same human hopes and fears that have guided us for millennia. Even the question of whether the object is natural or artificial speaks more to our longing for connection than to the data itself. Still, the scientific discipline held firm. Conclusions would wait until Jupiter provided its verdict. Models would refine, numbers would tighten, hypotheses would either converge or collapse. But for now, everything remained suspended like a breath held between possibility and truth. In living rooms, dorm rooms, and remote cabins, people read about the object on their phones late at night. Some felt excitement. Some felt unease. Some felt an inexplicable peace. But nearly all felt small in a way that was strangely comforting. The universe was vast enough to carry secrets, and humanity was humble enough to listen. Across the world, astrophysicists prepared their instruments for March. Software engineers updated algorithms. Juno schedulers refined observation windows. Telescope operators tested filters and recalibrated sensors. And through all this quiet preparation, one awareness grew steadily, whatever 3i Atlas truly was, a comet. an artifact, an accident of nature, or a relic of ancient hands, it had already changed us. It had reminded us that discovery is not just about answers, but about the widening of perspective. It had rekindled something fragile and essential, the feeling of standing beneath a vast sky, and knowing that we do not yet understand everything we see. And perhaps in the end that is enough. As March approached and the shadow of Jupiter stretched farther across the solar system, a stillness settled over the community watching Three-Eye Atlas. It was not the stillness of inactivity nor of boredom, but the quiet that comes before a revelation, an ancient instinctive silence like the moments before dawn when the world seems to hold its breath. No one said it aloud, yet everyone sensed it. Whatever happened during the Jupiter passage would define the narrative of this object for decades, perhaps centuries. Observers reflected on how strange it was that so much meaning had attached itself to something so small in the grand architecture of space. A nucleus only a few kilometers across, humble, silent, indifferent, yet capable of igniting questions large enough to span human history. The contrast felt almost poetic. A mountain of ice wandering through the dark becomes a lens through which humanity examines itself. Scientists often describe cosmic events in technical terms: vectors, luminosities, spectra, orbital elements. But beneath those terms lies emotion, even if subdued, or curiosity-humility. These feelings, though rarely included in published papers, shape the human experience of discovery. And as Jupiter drew nearer in the sky relative to Three-Eye Atlas, those feelings strengthened. For some, the object represented the possibility that life elsewhere might leave fingerprints, not intentional messages, not signals, but remnants. The universe is old enough for civilizations to rise and vanish countless times. Their technologies, their probes, their tools could wander long after their makers had dissolved into their planet's soils. If Three-Eye Atlas was such a remnant, it would be the first artifact of cosmic archaeology humanity had ever encountered, a relic without a culture, a message without a sender. Others focused more firmly on the natural explanation. They saw Three Atlas as a chance to refine comet models, to understand the behavior of volatile materials formed under alien conditions. They imagined laboratories recreating exotic ices, testing how CO2 or CO trapped within interstellar grains might behave when heated suddenly near a sun. In this view, the object was not a messenger of intelligence, but a messenger of physics carrying information about environments Earth could never visit. Both of these perspectives, though, different in tone, shared a quiet reverence for the universe's complexity. In small observatories and large institutions alike, researchers found themselves contemplating the era humanity was living in. Barely a century had passed since we discovered the structure of the atom, barely 5 decades since the discovery of the first exoplanet. And now, in the span of less than a human lifetime, we were tracking interstellar visitors, objects flung across the galaxy that happened to pass near our sun. It was a reminder that the universe had always been speaking. We had simply lacked the instruments to listen. Jupiter, ancient and inscrutable, waited at the centre of its swirling storms. Its great red spot, a cyclone older than the invention of writing, spun with quiet persistence. The planet is not alive, but it feels watching. Not aware, but deeply present. Its gravity, stronger than anything else in the solar system besides the sun, acts like a cosmic gatekeeper. Anything passing near it must reveal itself through motion. Three-Eye Atlas would soon cross that threshold. Juno, with its elliptical orbit dipping close to the planet's cloud tops and then swinging far out again, stood ready. Its sensors were built for studying Jupiter's aurora's magnetic fields and atmospheric currents, but they were sensitive enough to detect subtle brightness, changes ionized particles, and shifts in trajectory. In the quiet hours before the encounter, mission engineers double-checked the timing of each observation window. The spacecraft would not miss its moment. On Earth, the mood was reflective, almost contemplative. Amateur astronomers gathered online sharing simulations and predictions. Students followed the story with a kind of gentle fascination, feeling for perhaps the first time that astronomy was not a distant science reserved for experts, but a shared human experience. Even people who had never looked through a telescope began to sense the depth of what was unfolding that they were alive at a moment when the universe had decided for reasons unknown to send a visitor through their sky. And yet, for all the anticipation, there was also acceptance. Acceptance that the universe does not perform for us. Acceptance that the object may reveal nothing spectacular. Acceptance that some mysteries remain mysteries not because they are unsolvable, but because they exist on timescales longer than our own. Whether 3I Atlas was a natural comet, an exotic interstellar shard, or a remnant of something ancient and forgotten, its presence had already accomplished something profound. It had reminded humanity of its vulnerability and its wonder. It had reminded us that we are children in a vast cosmic landscape, still learning to walk, still learning to see, still learning to interpret the faint signals drifting across the dark. Some nights researchers stepped outside their labs and looked at Jupiter in the sky, bright, steady, unchanging to the naked eye. They imagined the invisible arc of 3I Atlas approaching it, imagined the way gravity would tug at its path, imagined the invisible mathematics that bind all motion together, and they felt small but not diminished. Small in the way one feels when standing at the edge of an ocean. Soon the encounter would come, soon the data would arrive, soon the equations would converge on something real. But until then, humanity waited, and in that waiting a new awareness emerged that maybe this object was not a message sent to us, but a reminder that we do not need to be at the centre of the universe to belong within it. As the date of the Jovian passage drew near, a subtle shift took place in the minds of those who had been following 3I Atlas from the beginning. The debates grew softer, the arguments more contemplative. It was as if the closer the object approached this gravitational crossroads, the more people realised that the true significance of the event did not lie in the answer waiting on the other side, but in the experience of watching the universe reveal itself in increments. In every field, from astrophysics to philosophy, there emerged the same gentle truth. Mysteries do not owe us resolution. They offer us participation. Yet the scientific work continued with discipline and devotion. Orbital calculators refined their models daily, adjusting for every new observation. Simulations ran through the night across countless university servers, each one predicting a slightly different future for the interstellar traveller. Some trajectories showed the object bending outward and away, returning to the infinite dark. Others implied a faint but measurable inward drift, something subtle, something that would take months or years to confirm. A few rare simulations showed a possibility too improbable to bet on but too intriguing to ignore temporary capture. Not a moon, not a stable orbit, just a long pause in the object's cosmic wandering years, decades, perhaps even centuries before slipping free again. A visitor resting by Jupiter's side before continuing its pilgrimage through the galaxy. But these simulations were whispers at the margins of mathematics, and the universe rarely aligns itself with human speculation. Still, the idea brought a strange comfort. The notion that this object, which had travelled untold distances across the emptiness, might linger a little while within our solar system as if taking shelter, as if allowing us to observe it with patient curiosity, felt almost like companionship. Not in the emotional sense, but in the cosmic sense, two travellers crossing paths in a universe too large to map. Observers also found themselves contemplating the fate of the object. If it returned to interstellar space, it would carry with it the chemical traces of our sun's radiation, the warmth of passing by a star it had never known before, and the faint gravitational signatures etched into its orbit by the planets it encountered. These details would cling to its surface like memories, a distant record of a brief encounter with our solar system. And it would drift onward perhaps for millions of years, perhaps forever. A quiet thought formed in many hearts: if the universe is filled with such wanderers, then the galaxy is not empty. It is alive with motion, with remnants, with untold histories drifting through the dark. As researchers across the world waited for Juno's upcoming observations, a parallel effort unfolded in an examination of the error bars. Error bars are unglamorous, often overlooked, yet they shape the boundaries of every conclusion. Scientists revisited uncertainties in distance, measurements, brightness calibrations, spectroscopic baselines, timing offsets. Each revision either sharpened the picture or blurred it further. Unexpectedly, this process became a meditation of its own, an acknowledgement that clarity and uncertainty do not oppose each other but coexist. In labs illuminated by the soft glow of monitors, researchers stared at graphs showing cometary light curves that rose and fell with an almost human rhythm. The variations were too subtle to feel intentional, yet too specific to feel entirely random. But such feelings were illusions, artifacts of humanity's desire to imprint agency onto the universe. Even so, they created a sense of connection, the kind that makes people lean back in their chairs at 2 a.m., rub their tired eyes and whisper to themselves, "What are you?" This question, simple, ancient, echoed through observatories, classrooms, online, forums, and quiet living rooms, where people followed the story with a sense of wonder they could not quite explain. What are you? What brought you here? What shaped you in the cold between stars? Are you a message, a remnant, a coincidence? And why among all the paths you could have taken through the Milky Way did yours cross ours? These questions were not demands. They were invitations, and 3i Atlas, silent as it was invited them simply by existing. Humanity often imagines that great cosmic events must be dramatic collisions, explosions, supernovae. But sometimes the most profound events arrive quietly, a faint anomaly, a subtle shift, a silence that feels intentional, a comet that should behave one way but behaves just slightly differently. These are not fireworks, they are whispers, and whispers reach places shouts cannot. As the final weeks before the flyby ticked away, the world entered a kind of collective pause. Not everyone noticed it consciously, but the feeling was there, a soft tension, a sense that the present moment was balancing on the edge of something meaningful. Even those who had no interest in astronomy sensed it in the news headlines or the conversations around them. A visitor from another star, an anomaly in its motion, a question that science could not yet answer. The universe had placed a quiet question mark in the sky, and humanity, curious by nature, was leaning toward it. Researchers sometimes stepped outside their observatories late at night, feeling the cold air press against their skin. They looked up knowing 3i Atlas was somewhere out there, invisible to the naked eye, moving with unhurried precision through the dark. And they felt a calmness settle over them, the kind that comes only from recognizing one's place in the cosmos. Small, curious, awake. Perhaps that was the true gift of the object, not answers, but awareness. A reminder that the universe is not empty, but filled with motion and history and quiet, drifting visitors. A reminder that the unknown is not a threat, but a companion. And as Jupiter prepared to cast its gravitational influence, the object continued forward silent and steady, carrying its secrets. And so, as the final days before the Jovian passage settled over the solar system, a certain stillness began to grow, not in space itself, but in the hearts and minds of those who had followed 3 Atlas from the beginning. The debate slowed, predictions softened, even the most analytical voices became quieter, as if they sensed that the universe was approaching a moment that required listening, not speaking. There comes a point in every great scientific story when the instruments are prepared, the models are finished, the simulations are running on their own, and the only thing left for humanity to do is wait, a patient contemplative waiting. The kind of waiting that invites introspection, humility, and a deep awareness of scale. It is the same feeling one gets standing on a shoreline at dusk watching an unfamiliar tide approach. Knowing that whatever arrives will arrive on its own terms, 3i Atlas continued its slow, precise motion through space unbothered by the meaning humans placed upon it. It had no audience, no intention, no story to tell, and yet it became one of the most profound stories of our time. A wandering object no larger than a mountain drifting through the gravitational field of our sun had managed, without trying to make millions of people look up at the night sky with a sense of wonder they had forgotten. Whether it was a comet, an artifact, a relic of a long-dead star system, or something stranger altogether, it had already changed us. Even the most skeptical scientists admitted quietly that this object had rekindled something ancient in humanity, the feeling of being small in a vast cosmos and the comfort that comes with that recognition. The comfort of knowing we are part of something immense. The days leading up to the flyby felt almost ceremonial. Instruments were calibrated with careful precision. Observation schedules were refined. Data teams rehearsed their procedures. And beneath all this technical choreography ran a deeper pulse, a sense that the universe was offering a rare moment of alignment between mystery and observation, between wonder and measurement, between humanity and the deep unknown. People everywhere followed the updates with an unusual calm, not the frantic excitement of breaking news, but the slow, steady curiosity of a species learning patience. Long after midnight, amateur stargazers stood in fields looking at Jupiter and knowing that somewhere in that direction an interstellar traveller was making its closest approach. They couldn't see, it couldn't touch it, but awareness alone was enough. That distant motion became a kind of cosmic meditation, an awareness of movement beyond sight, beyond sound, beyond comprehension. In laboratories, researchers revisited their assumptions. They accepted that nature might be stranger than their models. They acknowledged that the line between the artificial and the natural is thin, sometimes invisible. They remembered that comets can mimic intention, that physics can echo design, that the universe often creates structures so elegant that they feel engineered even when they are not. And yet they also knew that possibility cannot be dismissed, that humility demands openness, that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. This balance between rigour and wonder became the true heart of the Through Atlas story. By the time the object entered Jupiter's sphere of influence, even the most hardened skeptics found themselves strangely moved. They saw Through Atlas not as a threat or a puzzle, but as a visitor, a wanderer shaped by forces older than Earth itself, now passing through our cosmic neighbourhood like a traveller pausing at the edge of a long road. If the object revealed nothing extraordinary during the flyby, it would not diminish its meaning. The significance was never in the spectacle, it was in the journey, in the questions it awakened, in the stillness it inspired, in the way it shifted human perspectives subtly, gently, irrevocably. And so humanity watched as the object drifted past Jupiter. There was no flash, no outburst, no sudden signal or revelation, just motion calm, steady, inevitable. Gravity curved its path, the sun illuminated its dust, and after a brief moment in the presence of the gas giant, the object continued onward, carrying its mysteries with it like a sealed letter from another epoch. Some called this anticlimactic. Others whispered that this was exactly how the universe speaks, not with fireworks, but with silence. Not with answers, but with perspective. The cosmos rarely gives us what we expect, but often it gives us what we need. Because Through Atlas had already accomplished something profound, it reminded us that we do not need to be the centre of the universe to belong within it. It reminded us that mystery is not a gap in our knowledge, but a bridge to wonder. It reminded us that existence is not a puzzle to be solved, but an ocean to be explored slowly, humbly, lovingly. As the object faded into the distance, a soft truth settled over everyone who had followed its journey. Some mysteries do not need resolution to be meaningful. Some questions are meant to accompany us, not to be answered. Some stories do not end. They simply drift onward the way 3i Atlas drifted beyond Jupiter, beyond our expectations, beyond our reach. And perhaps that is the final gift this interstellar traveller offered, the realization that it is all right not to understand. That uncertainty is not a failure, but a companion. That curiosity is a kind of light, and that the cosmos in its vast indifference remains a gentle teacher. Whatever 3 Atlas truly was, comet, relic, artifact, or ancient wanderer, it leaves us with a quiet lesson. Smallness is not insignificance. Silence is not emptiness, and the unknown is not a void, but an invitation. So rest now, traveller. Let the mystery drift with you into the dark. The cosmos will keep watch. Traveller, if you've made it this far, then you and I have crossed a long stretch of darkness together. We followed a lone interstellar wanderer across millions of kilometres, through sunlight, shadow and silence. And even now, as 3 Atlas drifts beyond our reach, the truth remains suspended like a faint echo lingering between the stars. Maybe it's a comet behaving strangely. Maybe it's something older, something designed, something carrying memories from a star we will never see. Or maybe it's simply a reminder that the universe is still capable of surprising us quietly, gently, without spectacle. What matters, observer, is not the answer. It's the act of watching, It's the humility of admitting that we do not yet understand. It's the realization that in a cosmos, this vast uncertainty is not an enemy, it is a companion. Tonight, as telescopes continue their silent vigil, and data streams whisper through observatory halls, the question remains open. What are you, Three-Eye Atlas? And somewhere in that unanswered question, wonder lives. So rest now, traveller. You've listened with patience. You've walked the edge of the unknown with an open mind. Let the mystery settle beside you like starlight. Stay curious. Rest well. And if this story found you tonight, you're welcome to stay for the next. The universe will keep watch.